Hey guys, not a great chess day today. Played 3, lost 3, and I want to show you the first game that I played today because it's just one of those great examples of starting off with a fantastic position. Felt like I had my opponent on the ropes and I just eased off the gas. But it started really well. So I think all 3 games are started with black, and we have the French. And now my opponent brings out his bishop, which I think is inaccurate at this point in time because already I can win a tempo and effectively switch the position so that I almost become white, okay? So with this, d5, okay? And if pawn takes, which is what happens, I recapture with the pawn, and now white has to move his bishop again because my pawn's defended by the queen, so the bishop is forced to drop back. And now I have the initiative. So I play knight to f6. d3 is played, enabling the bishop to come out, maybe pin the knight. So I develop my bishop, now looking at the f2 pawn. And queen comes out with check, and I simply block with my light square bishop, making it a tall pawn, just shoring up this pawn again. Blocking the check, h3 is played, and I castle, knight to f3. Now I line up my my rook, centralize my rook on the open file. The e file is completely open, and obviously moving the bishop now would come with an attack on the queen. White doesn't notice, so now I can simply grab h3, which he pushed earlier. And he's got to do something about his queen, so moves his queen out the way, and I simply retreat my bishop, now pinning the knight on f3. Bishop comes out as expected, pinning my knight against the queen. I just push c6, and he develops his other knight. Okay, so I'm a pawn up at this point in time. Now queen d6 is a nice move because it still defends the knight here, but gets the queen out of the pin. d4 is pushed, threatening my dark square bishop. I just drop back, and now c3. So I think one idea is to drop the bishop back behind the queen, try and eliminate this knight. One thing is that the other knight has moved to d2, so it can simply replace that knight and guard the h2 checkmating square. I drop my bishop back anyway, and now white plays g3, putting a stop to any of those ideas of dropping the queen in here. I now kick the bishop, bishop retreats, now attacking the queen and also the bishop behind it if he wants to take that. So I drop my queen back. Now he moves his queen to c2, and I grab white's bishop, forcing white to double up pawns. So doubled and isolated pawns now on the f-file, and also exposes the king on the g-file. So I attack the rook, he counterattacks the queen, and now I figure that this is a free knight, okay? Because let's say white captures the rook, okay? So I can come in here with check. The king only has 2 squares to go to, and then queen g2 would be checkmate, okay? So white cannot recapture. So they move their queen back to d1, guarding this square from my queen. So I simply retreat the rook. I figure there's no rush. I've got a significant advantage. I'm up a pawn and a knight at this time. They drop their bishop back to c2, and I go in basically forcing an exchange of queens. Now here I capture with the bishop, figuring that I just want to keep my pieces relatively safe. I mean, the recapturing with a knight could have been an idea as well, because now f3 is played. And I figure that actually if I'd recaptured with my knight here, I could have moved in to e3 if he'd played the same move and pushed the pawn with a fork on the bishop and rook. But that's not playable now. But it's a good position, very, very good position for black. I mean, you'd call it a winning position, really. White's pawn structure is poor, the king is very exposed, and I'm up a full piece and a pawn. So they push a rook to f2. I bring my bishop back, proposing a trade of bishops. He doesn't want that, so I move my bishop back there. But now this pawn push here has actually blocked the line for his bishop, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. My light square bishop does have some issues, stuck over there in the corner. So he starts to bring his knight around, I develop my other knight, connecting my rooks. Now he comes towards my bishop, but it's okay, it's defended by my knight. So I now think about maybe moving my knight around here, maybe looking at this pawn. It just needs a nice way into the game, so he pushes b3 to prevent that. Now I come after this pawn with the rook, and we have an exchange. And now the rook comes round, and I simply retreat the knight. Okay, so I'm thinking, look, simplify, this is all good. Rook comes to f1 to defend this pawn. Now I'm going to reroute my knight yet again, round to here. Very common in the middle game, you just want to improve your position with every turn, if you can. Rook f2, and just some general maneuvering now, and this is just simply a blunder. I just give up my knight for a pawn for some reason. I mean, I could have even grabbed the bishop and then grabbed the pawn if I wanted to and lost slight material, but that's just, for the first time in the game, I just kind of took my eye off the ball, didn't calculate what's going to happen, and that's just poor. But I'm still 3 pawns up. Yeah, we've both got a minor piece, but I've got 7 pawns to my opponent's 4. So I throw in a check on c1. Now I kick the bishop, bishop retreats. Now I centralise my other rook onto the open e-file. So I figure it would be great to put both rooks on here, get a rook to e2, force an exchange of rooks, and I should be okay. Rook comes back here, that's not too bad. I hit the rook, rook moves, I come back and hit the rook again, rook moves again. Now king h7. It does mean this pawn is pinned, but I'm feeling relatively safe, actually. Now they push another pawn, and I figure if he wants to push again to f5, I can simply push g5, and then again this bishop is neutralized because he's got his own pawn in the way. So I move my rook to e1. Bishop comes to d3, protecting this square. And now I lift my other rook, now hitting the bishop. Rook comes across to defend the bishop. And now I bring my knight into e4, hitting the rook. Okay, so how can the rook continue to defend the bishop? It can't really. Okay, so we take and I recapture now with a pawn. I think rook captures would have been very good as well. Pushes f5, and now I force an exchange of rooks. Okay, so now I've got this 3 pawn majority. We've got hanging pawns, quite a lot that can be captured here. So I throw in the check and I grab the pawn. We have an exchange of pawns there. So now it's 6 pawns against 4. I'm 4 pawns in front. Now 3 pawns in front. Now I attack this other pawn, but now I fall to a 7th rank, have to move, lose another pawn, and now the rook is defending the pawn on b3, which is annoying. So I drop my rook back, defending both of these pawns, but my king is now tied to the back rank. But still I'm thinking this is my game, I should be able to walk it in. Okay, so king advances, start pushing pawn on the h-file, and now I decide to try and push for an exchange of rooks. White's not having that, moves the rook away. Now I grab a pawn, and now king captures on g6, and here my red light should have been spinning with sirens going like that. I'm still 2 pawns up, but can you see the immediate threat here? For some reason I decide to push h4. Rook c8 is a classic checkmate with king and rook. The pawns don't matter because I got checkmated. So, I mean, in this position, there are so many options. I mean, I could have played, for example, rook g3 check. If king takes the pawn, I can come back here, and that should still be a completely winning position. If we exchange rooks, I'm very happy this pawn is going to promote completely unopposed. It would have been absolutely fine. It just goes to show, right? You have to keep the exact same mental discipline going into every game, but every single move on every game. I mean, I had that game by the throat, really from the start. I had a material advantage, excellent kind of vision to grab the free knight with a checkmate threat that my opponent couldn't recapture. And I just got lazy, I got happy. Oh dear. So that's the discipline that I need to be working on in my own games. Taking that same just complete bastard approach to every single turn that I have. And here I threw away a completely winning advantage. So, I mean, I don't know what you can do to train that. You know, I don't know whether you need some kind of mantra that you repeat with every move. You know, what's the most evil thing that I can do right now is a good one. But bottom line is, I neglected king safety. After the king took here, I just, you know, I didn't say to myself, all right, what is is my king safe? And my king wasn't safe. That is just the simplest checkmate that nearly every player knows and can spot off by heart. Got 19 and a half minutes left on the clock. There's absolutely no excuse for losing a game in this position. So there you go. This is what I need to be working on. Just carrying forward that same evil mentality in every single move, in every single game. Clearly today is not an ideal chess day, but there's always another day. So we'll live to fight another day, hopefully get stronger with each day that goes by. But there you go. Not a pleasant game to share, but I think it was instructive and you know, lots of positives to take from that. But the key is, even when you think that you are in front, even when you've got a winning position, you still have to convert it. Okay, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you soon.